I'd like to call back to order the regular meeting of the Lake Forest Community High School Board of Education meeting for May 8th, 2017. May I have a roll call, please?
Dr. Nemekis?
Here.
Dr. Elliott?
Here.
Ms. Davis?
Here.
Mrs. Kryling?
Here.
Mr. Markison?
Here.
Mr. Lane?
Here.
Mr. Mormon?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. I'll try and be quick. I have three things I want to say, separate but related. First, number one, congratulations to our newly elected board members, especially Dr. Nemekis, who's new to the board, versus Sally, Dave, and Ted, who are back for more. Also, congratulations to our new Vice President, Dave Lane, and re-elected Secretary, Ted Mormon. I'm humbled to continue to serve as president. My point related to bringing up the election and our newly elected officers and board members is that community, we heard you. So, number two, this is kind of fun. I learned a new word this week called adulting. Adulting means paying your bills, doing your taxes, grown-up mundane stuff. Think hashtag adulting. So if you enter it in Twitter, you'll see tweets like, adulting is hard, want to play AYSO soccer again, sad face. Once I got past the funny stuff, I realized that's what we do, adulting. The goals of high school aren't all-conference soccer team or passing AP tests. We want our kids to be successful adults. Parenting is adulting. Teaching is adulting. Parents, teachers, school staff, and the entire community have a role in developing self-reliant, problem-solving, resilient souls. No handbook or app for that because we're all unique, which gets me to point number three. We had a great education committee meeting last week. Dr. Elliott will talk more about the meeting later. Dr. Holland and her team talked about our supports. Kids are getting the supports they need to be successful, and we all need to do more to make it okay to ask for help. All of us had help, and a lot of us, myself included, were lucky enough not to have to ask. Parents hate to see their kids struggle, and in our quest to help, we sometimes remove challenges. That's wrong. That's not adulting. High school and college, too, is when kids are supposed to push themselves, try stuff, fail, and learn. The failing and learning and asking for help is how to develop into a self-reliant, problem-solving, resilient adult. That's adulting. And cleaning your room every once in a while. So, down to business. Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Markison, and I am saddened to see our students not here, and we'll hand off to Dr. Holland to begin.
They are adulting, and they have made some decisions regarding their priorities for the evening, sports and AP testing. Good. So they are not here. Connected with AP testing, we're currently in the middle of it, and because of the large amount of students enrolled in our AP program this year, and the large amount of students taking AP exams, last week and this week, we have placed specific parameters around the use of the library because we are using the library classrooms. We're also using the study hall rooms for testing because they're significantly larger than our classrooms. We recognize that this is not ideal for everyone, and we have also communicated alternative options for students who prefer to study in a different space than what has been provided in relation to their originally scheduled study hall. If our numbers continue to increase as they have, we will have to develop a different plan for administering our AP exams. We've recently engaged in these conversations. This year, we have approximately 200 more exams that are being given this year. So we continue to increase our student participation in our AP program. This is not a bad problem to have. We just have to think about capacity and the impact on giving this assessment during the day, the impact on the rest of the students. So we are currently having those conversations. Our musical, Urinetown, was a huge success. Had a lot of fun. I attended on opening night, and it was great to see the RMA filled. Our students did a phenomenal job acting, and the music was great. The choreography was wonderful. And many of our teachers aligned their curriculum with the outline or the focus of the play. And so I want to thank Kelly McBlain and John Loniger, our directors, for their work and for also working with our faculty to identify connections between the curriculum in our classes and the focus of the play. So that was very cool to see. Last week, we had our Student Service Recognition Night, which is probably, to me, one of the most important nights of the year, where we get to see and honor several hundred of our students and staff, a few staff members involved in various aspects of service across the school community. I would like to publicly thank Kathy O'Hara for being the force behind our thriving community and volunteer service program. It's amazing to see the scope of her impact in her work, her relationships with students, as well as local organizations to create these experiences. This year, Jim Sullivan has spent the year learning under Kathy's tutelage and to help with the support of his transition into the role. We feel really good about his transition and also his vision towards expanding the work that she already has put in place. So our Student Service Recognition Night was really a special night. Last week, we communicated the exam survey results with our staff. This week, I'll be sending out a communication to our parents and students regarding the exam survey results, and there will also be an opportunity for parents and students to submit questions after looking at the information. I'm also scheduling and communicating meetings with our parents and students to talk through the results and to hear questions as well. Our goal, as we've communicated, is to make a decision regarding this by the end of the school year, so that's a few weeks. But we're engaging a process of making sure that we have open communication with each of our stakeholder groups regarding the results. Prom is this Saturday. It's at the Hyatt Regency O'Hare. I want to thank our junior class for planning the event. I also want to thank LEAD for continuing to offer positive post-prom options for our students. That's been a really great partnership. E-Day, our emotional wellness walk, is coming up on May 16th, and it's our walk that raises awareness and supports our district-wide focus on well-being and wellness. John's going to speak to that a little bit tonight, but we're constantly striving to improve in that area, and I think we have some work to do, but we're really feeling good about the relationship that we're establishing between social-emotional wellness as well as our academic progress, recognizing that both go hand in hand, and we want our kids to feel good about the experience that they're having while they're learning. Foundation. A huge thank to Lake Forest High School Foundation for continuing to partner with us in very meaningful ways. The foundation supports the school in all of our, all aspects of our delivery of our instructional and our teaching and learning experiences that we provide for students. And this last week, a couple weeks ago, I'm starting to get confused on the dates, last week they presented our grants to our faculty members. And in thinking about our work in living and realizing the strategic plan, the foundation has really been true partners in helping us deliver some of the supports and services through the creation and acceptance of those grants. And so I want to thank them for their help. We're also looking forward to continuing to report out the progress that we're making regarding our supports and professional growth. We're also looking forward to our Business Incubator Pitch Night, which is on May 25th at 7 p.m. in the RMA, something else that we partner with the foundation around. So just want to say thank you to the foundation. They continue to help us in a lot of ways. And I also want to say welcome to Dr. Nemekis. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Holland. And this time of year where there's all sorts of end-of-year activities, the high school APT just closed their year out this past week, and Missy Berger did a really terrific job as president over the past 2 years and handed the reins to Liz Gescheidel, who is a very capable incoming president as well. The High School Foundation also held its spring luncheon, and today, as Dr. Holland mentioned, they announced their grants. I believe it was $230,000 that they contributed to various causes around the building. It's really astonishing. And to amplify what Dr. Holland was saying, one of the things that has been most encouraging in watching the high school foundation do its work over the past several years is that they ventured into unknown territory in supporting programs, specific programs within the district that they had never done before. So one of our points of pride as a district is the innovation incubator. That couldn't have happened without the foundation, and there was a lot of hand-wringing on their part regarding whether or not this was within their mission, whether they were comfortable with it, and they were not comfortable with it. The same way we want our students to take risks, the foundation took a risk, and I think that's been one of our biggest successes. Also, a number of meetings at the end of the year. I speak with the Learning Disabilities Association tomorrow. They've been very interested to watch the work of the district, and as Dr. Holland mentioned, the number of supports that we have for our students, but also they recognize that supports are for all students, not just for some students. So they're eager to hear about the work of both districts tomorrow. Also a member of the Chamber Board here. There's a meeting tomorrow, and Dr. Holland and I just, at least for me, one of the hardest things of the entire year, we're given a little thing, and it's the Principals Award and the Superintendent's Award, and you have to go over to the library and pick one piece of art that our kids have done in a whole sea of amazing stuff and say, yeah, this one's special. And I don't know about you, but that's like the lowest. You're an art person. I have absolutely no idea, so I just hope I pick something good every time. So it's fun, but not without its challenges. So that art show is on display over at the library, the Lake Forest Library, until I think the end of the month.
That's it. Thank you. So committee reports. Education Committee, Lise?
Yes, we met last week, May 2nd, and it was a very packed meeting. We had two presentations. One was by Jim Sullivan and Kathy O'Hara about the many initiatives for introducing students to careers and helping our students develop a career goal over their 4 years. And so the longest standing initiative in this realm has been the Open Doors program that Kathy O'Hara developed and has led, and I believe is handing off to Jim Sullivan. These are the career opportunities students have in November, and we learned that 198 students took advantage of that, which is a pretty good number. They'd like to do better, but part of the problem is the constrained time, that it's just happening over this one couple of days. So the overall career initiative is much larger than that, and it includes students doing Myers-Briggs and other sorts of surveys to identify career interests, having every student hopefully have some sort of career exploration, if not Open Doors, then another opportunity. And the goal is to have every student graduate with some kind of career goal that sets their educational objectives upon graduation. And I guess the latest initiative that we also learned about is an internship program that's going to kick off this summer. And it sounds like about a dozen students or so will be able to participate in that. And then the second presentation was on the multi-tiered systems of support that you were alluding to a little bit, Reese. It's not just for students with identified special needs, but the goal is that every student will be met where they are. And so we've been hearing about some of these things, but it was nice to have it all laid out for us. The different tiers, Tier 1, which is includes departmental resources and peer tutoring. Tier 2, where support is more targeted to individuals' specific needs, such as math and executive functions through one-on-one teacher interactions. And then Tier 3, which will be more specialized classes for students who need more academic catch-up. So the good news is that student support, we're learning, is being less stigmatized, and that everybody gets the support that they need, and it's not a bad thing. The resource centers have become more welcoming. The peer tutoring has been a huge success, and we're going to get to see the video that advertises that. And then, of course, the personal learning time, which was added with the new schedule, has really expanded the opportunities. So just a remarkable number of new initiatives, and I think the goal then at this point is to be sure that all students are taking advantage of it, that right now the motivated students are taking great advantage of it, and to get some of the more struggling students involved seems to be the biggest priority. So with that, I think Shayla was going to show the peer tutoring video at this time.
That's what you wanted, right?
Hello, everyone. Katie and I are here to talk about the resource rooms and peer tutoring program. Steve Douglas was amazing in creating a video for us so we can highlight some of our supports in action.
The Peer Tutor Center has been open for about 4 months now. 3 ways we're seeing some success are through one-on-one setups in the classrooms, the Peer Tutor Center, and the resource centers, peer tutors helping out in full classes, and pairing up our peer tutors with the ELL students. We are continuing to build the program in these ways, as well as increase the amount of drop-ins to the Peer Tutor Center and add on more study sessions.
And now we're going to turn it over to Mary Beth Nawar.
Welcome to Enviro Geo Co-Taught. I use peer tutors in here quite a lot, and I love the peer tutoring program, one, because it gives me flexibility. So on a day when I feel like kids may have differing abilities and need different assistance, I can go down and talk to Michelle Jackson. She's fantastic. Sometimes even the day of, I'll go down there. I use them sometimes in small group settings where I'll have maybe 4 kids in each group, and there aren't enough of me to be with each group, and peer tutors can help move that process along. And with my English language learners, sometimes they need to be in a smaller group where it's one-on-one or maybe one with 2 kids, and they can move at their own pace and make sure that there's thorough understanding happening there.
I'm Griffin Strang. I'm a junior here at Lake Forest. Freshman year, it was kind of a big transition, and sometimes math was tough, so they recommended going to the MRC, and it's really helped because I got to know different teachers in the building and build relationships, and also if I was struggling in class, I could have gone there, got caught up with the topic, or get ahead for the future. So it's really helped over the years. Relieves stress and different, like, knowing that you can get through it and you don't have to stress that at home.
Griffin, you need help?
Yeah. Is y-axis always even?
Right, so y-axis is always an even function.
I use English Resource Center for when I have writing workshop. I usually go in here for peer edits, or if I just need help with grammar and stuff, I go in here, or to meet with different teachers.
We've had 3,149 total visits to the resource centers. We see more kids come to the resource centers when they are introduced to the centers by trusted adults. As you heard from Griffin, and now you're going to hear from Joe DeRosa.
So with my experience so far in the Humanities Resource Center, one of the things that I noticed was that a lot of students, while writing their social studies essays, didn't think it was a necessary part of the process to come to the Humanities Resource Center, to get feedback from a teacher, to have someone help them by editing their paper, or maybe thinking about it in a different way. So I layered in a level in the essay writing for my class where the students need to come to the Resource Center, need to talk to a social studies teacher, and get that kind of really valuable feedback. If it isn't a part of the process, I learned it probably is going to be a piece that either students don't know about or they just skip. To have a social studies teacher take a look at an analytical historical essay and maybe recognize a different direction a student could go in, maybe think about how they're organizing their argument and how they're proving their thesis. I think it's just really valuable. It's a really valuable resource that kids need to know how to take advantage of.
I'm Spencer Schmidt. I'm a senior at Lake Forest High School, and I like the Math Resource Center because I really do not like math, and it helps me because the teacher's here and I can get direct help. I come in every day during my free period, and because of the block schedule, I get a long free period, so I'm able to come in here for an extended amount of time. And I just work on like my regular homework, and then like if I need any help, I go to the teacher because she's my actual math teacher. And if I do come during like my lunch period, then I can get help from like other teachers too. But there's always a teacher in here, so like we're doing pretty good. I just have trouble finding like motivation towards math class because like I don't find the necessity in like studying math, but I know that it's part of my high school education, so I got to do it. I'm lost, but I'm here, so hopefully I won't be lost anymore.
How is this different? So I'll kind of show it on this.
Thank you. All done?
Can I add
Thank
one
you.
other thing?
Sure.
So the other thing that I got really excited about when Kathy O'Hara and Jim Sullivan were talking about the success of the Open Doors program, and my own son did it and had a tremendous experience. When I left the meeting, I sent notes to 3 people I know who I thought would be good fits for offering Open Doors experiences. And one of them has already written back and has already offered up 2 positions for next year. So the one thing I would ask is if you are in a position to either offer an Open Doors internship experience in November or perhaps next summer, I know this is just their pilot summer, or if you can lean on people who might be able to offer it. I think any of us that do that would be, it would be greatly appreciated. And the other thing that Kathy and Jim had said is it needs constant renewal. They don't get a lot of repeat, some they do. So anything that we can offer is, I think, enormously helpful to them. And I noticed that Mr. Lane was writing that down, and I was thinking how nearby Terlato Wines was, too.
I thought you might be.
Yeah. I didn't know if I was being too subtle.
You have a drinking age problem there, but yeah, no, thank you, Sally. I meant to mention that. That's probably the biggest hurdle, and I think Kathy mentioned there's 16 identified career clusters, and they've got representation among 13. So there's still a few holes to fill in.
I think wine tasting was one of them.
That might get me in trouble, though.
Hip replacement. Tom, can you let a kid do a hip replacement maybe under complete supervision maybe? Okay. Thank you. One of the committees that's still in the early stages is our communications group. Diana, do you want to talk a little bit about what we're doing?
Sure. Sally Davis and Ann Whipple and I met on February 21st, and kind of like you mentioned earlier, Reese, we heard the voters and we brainstormed additional ways to communicate and reach out to all of our external stakeholders. Kind of the consensus of our meeting was that we will look for new ways to reach out to the local groups and organizations, and we discussed doing an open house for the residents in the fall at the high school. And we're going to continue to work on that as to the timing and the structure and what would be the most interesting thing to bring people in for. Our newest board communication, the board meeting highlights that Mrs. Whipple does such a wonderful job with, continue to be well received. The district sends it to over 3,000 recipients, and it continues to have an open rate of 43%. To put this in context, the average industry, or the educational industry average, is 24%. So we're doing really well and hope people are getting the information, which is one of our goals, is to reach people. The board meeting highlights also goes to all 300 of our staff members. That doesn't reflect those metrics in that. So we're reaching a lot of people and getting the word out there, what's going on from a board perspective and from the school perspective. So we're continuing to work, and we're trying to find ways to reach our stakeholders.
Thank you. So Dave is new in his role as head of Finance and Ops. So last Finance and Operations Committee meeting, Dave wasn't the head of the Finance and Ops meeting, but we're going to try and wing a summary of what went on at that last meeting.
Great, will do. So the last meeting took place on April 12th, and as Reese alluded to, that was led by our former board member, John Powers, who hopefully is out enjoying himself watching a baseball game or whatever else. Needless to say, we talked about several things, many of which are going to be voted on tonight on the agenda. Those range from discussions about activity buses. We currently have 4 activity buses that we lease, and we discussed bringing another one up for renewal. We did do the research, we did check into it, and it was determined that we needed another activity bus, so as a replacement to one of the ones that's aging out. Additionally, we had longer conversations about the student fees. And these are not, one of the big topics of conversation was around the buses, not the student activity buses, but the buses that people take as transportation to and from school. The fact is that the costs incurred by the company that provides us services for the buses is significant and rising rapidly. So we did take the decision to increase some student fees, of which probably the most significant is the bus transportation fee, which will be a partial offset to some of the increased expenses coming in for this service that obviously we need to provide. We had an update on the 5-year capital projects. Probably the most significant conversation stemmed from our decision to more completely support a theater program and the rigging and the new work that has to be done to make our theater compliant and truly safe and functional. So that too will be discussed today. And then we talked also about transition, the transition class, and that's classes for students with between the ages of 18 to 22 who need the extra transitional time. And the fact is that that number of students has grown a lot. So we are looking at, and we'll continue to look at, the housing, the space, and the furniture and materials for those classes. So that will be part of more detail coming soon. Jen identified that. And beyond that, we have another meeting scheduled for June 28th. So at that meeting, Jen and I talked, and she thought it would be a good idea, and I agree, to help provide some new orientation for how to be an effective finance committee member, because we do have some new committee members that we thought would benefit from that. So that's pretty much what we talked about.
Great job. Ted, is there anything to report on policy and NSSCD? Go right to you.
Actually, for both, not much to report. We haven't met at NSSCD since our last board meeting here. The next NSSCD meeting will be this Wednesday at 7 p.m. in Highland Park, if anyone wants to join me.
Okay, thank you.
Nobody takes me up on that.
No, never. They never have. Sorry. Sally, Edred, anything new?
3 brief updates. There is obviously no bipartisan state budget proposal as we head into the spring session of the legislature. What's worth paying attention to is that there have been a number of bills introduced, none of which I think are going to be passed, but we're seeing recurring themes that relate to school education and funding. And if nothing else, if we can read the tea leaves from a trend standpoint, the 3 things that I want us to keep in mind is we are seeing both in the House and the Senate ongoing efforts to adopt what's called the evidence-based funding model for figuring out how much each student costs to educate depending on 20-some factors. It's something that EdRed supports. It's something that I think District 115 could support. And so if nothing else, as we see these informal conversations, I think it's beneficial to at least see them continuing to show up in the legislation. The other 2 types of legislation that were introduced leading up to the spring break were limits or controls on debt issuance and refinancing by school boards. Again, none of them passed, but it's interesting to see that there is a lot of movement around notifying your voters if you need to do some sort of referenda. There's a lot of pressure on what you need to tell the voters around the referenda. And then there were some attempts at putting limits, for instance, on debt issuance, debt refinancing. Again, if we watch from a trend perspective, that's important to be aware of. And then lastly, again, some efforts at property tax caps, same old, same old. Two other points. In addition to the fact that there is no education funding reform, there's also no budget. And I won't belabor that because Jen talked about it a bit at our last board meeting. But there is some risk that although K through 12 education was funded 100% last year by the state, we don't yet see the mechanism in place for that to start with the fiscal 18 school year beginning on July 1st. So it's anybody's bet whether or not the schools are going to get paid. it's a sign of our times that 400 superintendents in the state of Illinois began a Twitter social media campaign on April 24th to start shaming Governor Rauner and our legislature into passing some sort of education funding budget. Only one of the North Shore districts participated, Deerfield, but that I'm sort of speechless at what we've become. The last thing, for what it's worth, is that a Cook County judge dismissed the Chicago Public Schools' recent lawsuit against the state of Illinois. You'll recall that CPS had filed a lawsuit under the Civil Rights Act saying that both the way that education is funded in the state of Illinois and pension funding in the state of Illinois were violating the rights of minority students because some 90% of the Chicago Public Schools student body is minority. A Cook County judge dismissed the lawsuit in entirety, but CPS has until May 26th to refile. The judge actually compared Governor Rauner to Marie Antoinette, and mentioned the let them eat cake quote, but at the same time, he didn't feel that the lawsuit met the burden to continue. So I think what I'm expressing is my sort of stunned disappointment that nothing has changed.
Thank you. It's important for us to keep abreast of what's going on in Springfield and the state. So thank you. I did not skip over I didn't mean to skip over the CSCI survey report, but that's next on the agenda. So, John, you want?
Hi, everybody. Again, my name is John Maher. I'm one of the deans, but I'm also the Department Chair of Student Services over at the high school. I've been the one that's been kind of spearheading having the CSCI and the IYS surveys handed out. For the CSCI, it's been on a yearly basis for the past 3 years, which has been great. So just kind of wanted to go through a couple high points. As I go through this, if you have any questions, please stop me. So the survey for students was given out on January 10th. The one for staff and parents were given out from the 9th through the 20th. There are 11 dimensions for students. There are 13 dimensions for staff, the extra ones being leadership and professional relationships. The scoring kind of goes from 0 to 2.5 is negative, 2.5 to 3.5 neutral, and above a 3.5 is, and it's out of a 5-point scale, is a positive range. We do not have any numbers in the negative range. We have 3 dimensions in the neutral range, with some scoring at 3.5, which is the echelon of between neutral and positive. And then all the other dimensions are in the positive range. So what we did is we had a response rate of 63.47% of students, about 52.9% of school personnel, which is down a bit from last year. And then parents, which we do every other year, was at 25.95%, which is up just over 2% of what it was 2 years ago. It's always been a challenge of us to try to get parents to take this. It's kind of a lengthy survey. Strengths are very similar for students, school personnel, and parents. The interesting part is for the strengths for students is that 5 tied for third, and they all scored 4.0, with social support for adults and respect for diversity, scoring 4 out of 5. All stakeholders had as their lowest area a sense of social and emotional security, social and civic learning, and social media. You can get a better idea of that on this next slide. This ranks for students, school personnel, and parents, their top to bottom. As you can see, those bottom, again, are the 3 that I mentioned, but some are in a slightly different order. Again, physical surroundings tops everything. Sense of physical security and social support for adults are at the top 2. So there is still a gap to decrease between the student and personnel perceptions of social and civic learning. The nice part about having this 3 years in a row now is that we can start doing some comparisons in past years. For students, it scored a 3.33 back in 2015 with personnel at 3.9, and that was one of the things we talked about with staff, is why is our perception of social and civic learning pretty different than that of students. Now, as you see, from 2016, it goes from 3.5 for students to 3.8 for personnel, and then 2017, it continues to rise to 3.5 and has stayed about the same for personnel. So, social and civic learning is pretty much, it's more defined as how you relate to the world around you, how are you feeling as far as treating other people, and I kind of feel like our personnel feels like they really do a good job with it. Our students, I don't think, had been thinking that they were getting that as overtly as they should, but I see that gap decreasing. On the 2017 CSEI, the lowest score for social emotional security came from our sophomore class out of all the classes. And then parents of sophomores rated dimensions 3 and 5 being the social and civic learning and 3 being the social emotional security, the lowest of any parent subgroup. Our Lgbtq scores, which is only been new in the past couple years, improved with the exception of school connectedness, which went from 3.57 to 3.43. Not major, but still something I wanted to make sure we knew. But all the other scores in all the other dimensions went up. Leadership dimensions improved steadily over the 3-year period. In 2015, it was at 3.23, then a 3.5 last year, and a 3.75 this year. So that's been a real nice increase. Now this is a little bit, sorry I couldn't make the font any bigger, but I wanted it to get as much in as I could. These are the 13 extra questions that we added to the CSEI that we used. We talked with staff, we talked with administration. We vetted these questions pretty significantly. So last year was the first time we tacked on these 13 extra leadership questions. And so I kind of did a comparison between the 2016 and the 2017. So pretty much the 3 most agreed upon questions, I'm confident I know where to take particular questions or concerns, stayed about the same. The next one, I received useful guidance from my building level instructional leader. That did increase from 60 to 62%. Staff in our building have an effective forum to discuss important matters with building level leaders, went from 49% to 56%. So they're the most agreed upon questions, either stay the same or continue to improve. The questions that had the top percentage for both agree and disagree, my building level leaders provided effective communication about decisions that affect my job. The agreed part of that went from a 49% to a 51%, therefore decreasing the disagree part. The most strongly disagreed upon questions, input staff gives is reflected in final decisions made by district level leaders. That did decrease from 29% to 25%. And then district level leaders consider the impact of decisions on the workload placed on staff went from 39% to 35%. So we're seeing improvements just in the last 2 years with these 13 extra questions. The biggest improvement was the very one on the bottom with staff have access to district level leaders for instructional support. That went from a disagree of 25% to 20%, and an agree from 41% to 52%. So we see positive movement with these 13 additional questions. We felt like these were extremely important to point out, and these were the primary ones that I discussed with you last year. Finally, some next steps. We've been developing a 3-year well-being plan. And in this, it's a live document. We're constantly reworking it, constantly taking a look at what we need. We're looking at revamping aspects of the Health and Wellness for Life class, which is our year-long freshman health curriculum. So we've met already with Chris Moorhead and Joe Bussey, and we're taking a look at what we need to do related to the SEL standards. And then again, using the state's SEL standards as a guide, we want to establish a 1-year semester 10th grade health curriculum for the 2018-2019 school year. This kind of reflects back to even with the IYS data, the Annual Youth Survey, we have large gaps between 9th grade and 11th grade as far as increased numbers in use and risky behavior. So we really kind of like took a look at it and said, what else do we need to do? Because we feel like we're kind of missing sophomore year a little bit. And the interesting part is that in talking with other high schools, we just spent a day at Glenbrook South, and in talking with them, they have this great peer mentoring program. They feel like their sophomore year is kind of like a little bit of an enigma too, and they're struggling with it also. So that year being the year of driver's license and everything else, it's a year that we felt like we really wanted to take a good look at. So we're also looking into the start of a peer mentoring program, which is part of the reason why we're over at GPS. They've been doing one for 43 years. So it's a really interesting program. So, you know, we're always looking to steal some good stuff away from other schools. We're working closer with Croya and Enjoy the Journey Club in regards to peer training and adding that into the peer mentoring program. We're working with our athletic department and a number of other people, Michaeline Toback for student activities, and creating a video that can be used for sports and extracurricular activities that focuses on Scout values to give a consistent message. And then just creating more opportunities for professional development related to SEL standards and well-being. We have a well-being coordinator position, which is Matt Dewar, and he's been working really closely with me and many teachers as far as how to bring mindfulness into the classroom, things of that nature. It's been some kind of exciting stuff to watch. So that's the end. Any questions?
I have a question. John, I took the survey. I take it every year. It is very long, very repetitive.
Mm-hmm.
You have to make a commitment to take that. Is there a different option out there that would give us the same results so that we could get our participation numbers up?
There are different options. I don't know if you're going to get the same results. The reason why the CSEI, and we started giving it out back in 2007, and we're at that point we were doing it once every 3 years, was because we were working with the Charm Foundation and the Character Education partnership out in DC, and that was for those reasons something that we felt very strongly about because of the different dimensions. Those dimensions aren't split up in many other surveys. They don't get as specific. It's repetitive because it's been vetted so much that they have to do those repetitive questions to toss out the ones that that'll be red flagged, that somebody just kind of answered and kind of went through them all. So the hard part about surveys is you want to get a good survey, and you want to get something that has been vetted, been through studies, is cleared by many different companies. But yeah, it's long, it's a little arduous, without a doubt. Ann?
Well, and also, if you gave it in school on the 10th, how come we only had 64% of the students?
And that was a problem. We kind of feel like it was a combination of the new schedule, some kinks in it that we weren't aware of, that students were not always going to be where they thought they were going to be at the time. And so we're already trying to figure out how to definitely improve that for next year. That was our fault in trying to figure out how best to give this thing with the new schedule. Historically,
what do you get for the students, percentage-wise?
It went down last year. It was like 70%, and the year before that was 78%. It's because we have an open campus, we have a harder time getting seniors to take this. Open campus for seniors, I should say, not just in general. So the seniors have always been a struggle to have this taken. Last year, we ran into a little bit of technology problem because we had the whole school take it at one time, and that was an issue. So we're trying to work out some of these kinks as we go along. You want to talk about the parents?
Diana, one of the things to respond to your parent response question is we did do something a little different this year. We also administer this at District 67. In the past, we've done it during the same time frame. This year, we staggered the time frames and did get a little better response. We're even looking at opposite years. So it would have one of our schools have a bit of a jump, but if you look comparatively to the parent results, they track very similar to students and staff, and I think we might take that leap. I also talked to CSCI at length this year to say, what are some things you might suggest that other districts do? Do you have any other ideas? And quite frankly, we do far more than most other districts do. I also work closely with our parent groups, our APT boosters and foundation, and ask them to push it to their groups, so we kind of drill down to some of our major parent groups. But we are within the acceptable range to make it statistically significant. So I feel like we're at a good place, even though those numbers look small. They feel like it's a good response. We do get a number of responses from parents saying it's long and repetitive, the two things that you brought up. CSCI says to us that the repetition helps them really have valid results. So yes, it's there, but it's there by design. But I do think if we can stagger the years, it might even give us a bit of a bump, because to take it at the middle school and maybe the elementary level and then turn around and take it at the high school level, we have some parents that may be asked to take it 3 times within a certain time frame. So that would be my recommendation to do going forward, though we will have to spread it out a little bit.
I just had a question for John. This 10th grade curriculum, is this a new required course then? Another
we're looking
health
at
course?
possibly making it required for 1 semester of your sophomore year. And it would be, right now, Health and Wellness for Life is the state's health standards, kind of spread out over a year with some physical aspects to it, and other things that we feel like are important. What the sophomore curriculum we're looking to be is, and this even speaks to the SEL standards, is actually taking certain concepts and applying it. So, whether it's problem solving, decision making, taking that and kind of taking the Health and Wellness for Life and kind of putting it on steroids and making it more real life situations.
So it would be in lieu of one of their PE classes,
Yes.
basically? That's a trade-off, isn't it?
It's a trade-off. It's a trade-off. And we're working with Chris Moorhead right now as far as they're looking to do some creative things with wellness and their physical PE classes. So we're looking as how one can help each other.
Or maybe even a hybrid class, because they do go together.
Yeah. It's just at the beginning stages of discussion. But we feel like sophomore year, we do a great job with freshmen, and we hit freshmen from every angle. And whether that's meeting with your social worker, whether that's our Link Crew program, which Maggie Harmson does a great job with, whether that's peer training with Croya, sophomore year just gets kind of lost a little bit. And we feel like we need to be creative and trying to find out a way to hit that.
So when will this 3-year well-being plan be fully developed, completed?
My hope is by the beginning of next year. So, yeah, like starting at year 1 next year.
Any other thoughts, questions? No? Thanks, John.
Okay, thank you.
Me now. So, we now move on to the action items portion of our meeting. First action item is the approval of a new Chief Technology Officer multi-year contract. So may I have a motion to approve the Chief Technology Officer multi-year contract?
I move that the Lake Forest Community High School District 115 Board of Education approve the Chief Technology Officer multi-year contract.
Second?
Second.
Any comments or thoughts? We talked about the specifics of this and the need. We've been talking about the need for several months, and we talked about the specifics of the contract in closed session. Any other comments, questions? None? Okay. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
Dr. Elliott?
Aye.
Dr. Nemekis?
Aye.
Mr. Mormon?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Markison?
Aye.
Mrs. Kryling?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next, approval of an Assistant Director of Special Education, a 1-year contract. May I have a motion to approve the Assistant Director of Special Ed?
I move that the Lake Forest Community High School District 115 Board of Education approve the Assistant Director of Special Education 1-year contract.
Second?
Second.
Any comments, questions, thoughts? Again, this is something we discussed in detail in closed session. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Mormon?
Aye.
Dr. Nemekis?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Markison?
Aye.
Dr. Elliott?
Aye.
Mrs. Kryling?
Aye.
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next is approval of our Science Instructional Director, one-year contract, Ryan Adams. May I have a motion to approve the Science Instructional Director?
I move that the Lake Forest Community High School District 115 Board of Education approve the Science Instructional Director one-year contract.
Second?
Second.
Any thoughts, questions, comments? None? Roll call vote, please.
Dr. Elliott?
Aye.
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
Mr. Mormon?
Aye.
Mrs. Kryling?
Aye.
Mr. Markison?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Dr. Nemekis?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next is approval of a new 3-year lease of an activity van in the amount of $7,537, the one that Mr. Lane discussed. That was also discussed at our Finance and Ops Committee meeting. May I have a motion to approve the activity van 3-year lease?
I move that the Lake Forest Community High School District 115 Board of Education approve the activity van 3-year lease in the amount of $7,537 per year.
Second?
Second.
Any comments, thoughts, questions? None? May I have a roll call vote, please?
Dr. Nemekis?
Aye.
Mrs. Kryling?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Mormon?
Aye.
Mr. Markison?
Aye.
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
Dr. Elliott?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next is approval of the RJB Custodial contract renewal in the amount of $641,065.80. That's a 1% increase over the prior year. May I have a motion to approve the custodial contract?
I move that the Lake Forest Community High School District 115 Board of Education approve the RJB custodial contract renewal in the amount of $641,065.80.
Good. Second?
Second.
May I have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Mormon?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Dr. Nemekis?
Aye.
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
Dr. Elliott?
Aye.
Mr. Markison?
Aye.
Mrs. Kryling?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next is student fees. Jen, can you walk us through a little bit on student fees before we ask for a motion? Changes from last year, key components, anything that you think is critical?
I can walk you through a little bit. What we did include in your packet was a little bit of the history. As you recall, for many years, the last several years, we've kept our fees flat. Some are flat by law, such as driver's ed, which we cannot increase. Other were flat based on no anticipated increase in cost. We do have a couple of changes for this year to highlight, as Mr. Lane outlined in his Finance Committee report. Transportation probably is the most substantial. As approved by the board at the last meeting, we had a significant increase in our transportation costs. What this fee increase does is keep the same percentage of the board paid and the parent paid. So we're each paying approximately 50% of that cost, but it is an overall substantial increase. If you take a look, for example, for transportation per year, last year was $386. It is now $485. So that's a fairly significant 25% increase for families. The other one, just to note, is we also did talk and have conversation regarding the athletic participation fee. And you'll see that did increase. Sometimes we increase fees as a nominal value, as a CPI type of component. We took a look at athletics, which hasn't been moved in some time. There was consensus on the committee they'd like to see some even numbers as well. So instead of doing a 0.7 or a 0.8% or 1.1 or 1.7 that we've sometimes done in the past, we made it an even 225 from 217. The only other change that we made was a change in senior parking. So unless there's any questions, the rest were all flat from years prior.
So Jen, can you talk a little bit about the ability for families in need to obtain some help related to the transportation fees, or how does that work?
We do have some waiving of our fees if you qualify. So when you complete your students' online registration, there is a section on there that asks if you would like to be considered for a fee waiver And you can kind of click through that, which will start the process. I think we actually have a very generous fee waiver process, which is greater than what you would normally see for free and reduced lunch, which is kind of a national standard. We actually use something that is much higher, that we'll still waive fees. Those waive all of your mandatory fees. It does not necessarily waive all of your optional fees. We have other mechanisms in place through, I would call them just friends of the district, either through some of our parent organizations or related organizations that will help us offset the cost for some of those optionals as well. So really the big thing is, though, is start by clicking that box, because really if we don't know that you need some assistance, we certainly can't help you. So start there and we'll put you in the right direction.
Okay. Thank you. So, may I have a motion to approve the 2017-2018 student fees?
Could I ask one question first?
You can.
I would be remiss, ever since I've been on the board 2 years now, and one of the first questions to me was, find out what they do with that senior parking money. So since the senior parking rate is going up this year, I thought I would finally publicly ask the question that I don't know the answer to.
We get that question a lot. If you look in your packet and actually you see what the cost of parking is to do, or paving, to do just a small chunk, we actually look at that as just a very, very small partial offset of our parking and replacement.
Thank you.
So,
I move that the Lake Forest Community High School District 115 Board of Education approve the 2017-2018 student fees.
Second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Carling?
Aye.
Mr. Mormon?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Markison?
Aye.
Dr. Elliott?
Aye.
Dr. Nemekis?
Aye.
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next is the auditorium rigging bid that Dave alluded to in his finance and ops report. And we're going to hear a little bit about rigging. I asked for a rigging 101 analysis for us. I'll give you so we have someone here from Perkins & Will, is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I'm Rick Young, project manager with Perkins & Will. Worked on the stage rigging project. We actually are going to call in Todd Hensley, who works with Schuler Shook, who is the theater consultant, and they actually do the design for the stage rigging. While we're waiting for Todd, I can give you a little bit of background, even though it's not my particular area of expertise. The stage rigging, essentially what's happening there is the majority of all the winches are manually operated, and that means that the stage rigging that's held up on the lines is all held counterweighted with weights. And what we're moving to is a system where those are all lowered and taken up with winches, motorized winches. And so that's essentially what's behind what's being done at the high school in the revised design, is replacing all those. A big reason for that is your current theater director didn't feel comfortable with students having to raise and lower these stage rigging line sets with counterweights in those systems, and only very limited opportunities would he be able to have the students do that. So are we going to be calling in Todd? Oh, you do?
Good evening. This is Todd Hensley from Schuler Shook.
Hi, Todd. We can hear you. Can you hear us?
Okay. Pretty well. It's a little reverberant, but I think I can make out your comments.
Okay. Todd, did you hear my brief explanation there?
I heard just a bit of that.
Okay. Essentially, I just said the basic change is going from manual counterweighted line set systems to motorized winches to raise and lower the line sets.
Yes, indeed.
And the big driver behind that is safety and the allowing students to participate in that activity of changing out the line sets.
Yes, absolutely.
So could you give a little bit more background on what's being changed and some of the reasons behind that, beyond that?
Certainly. Am I addressing the gathered school board or a big group? I don't know who I'm giving the explanation to, Rick.
Yeah, there's the gathered school board here and a few audience participants.
Okay, very good. If you've been on the stage at the school, you'll see over on if you were facing the audience and reached out your left hand, you would see an array of machinery or mechanics that raise and lower the rigging pipes. They have a variety of shapes and forms. This is mostly predicated on the fact that the stage is not tall. It's not as tall as some theaters and doesn't allow the full travel of counterweights that might be shaped and formed in other fashions. As a coping mechanism, those weights are still applied on the stage left wall, but they are in a variety of forms. As Rick mentioned, one of the elements they lack is the ability to change out the manual weights in a safe and supervised and secure fashion. The overall height simply doesn't allow it to be detailed in such a way that that could be accommodated. Our design eliminates those manual counterweights for the most part. There are a couple of noted exceptions to that, which I'll explain, but it basically takes away the counterweights that can't be safely and securely accessed and manipulated with weights being taken on and off their balancing carriages. These are called counterweight arbors. We replace that with a motor. We control each of the motors with a sophisticated control system, and this gives students the ability to really participate on the stage by being part of that control and operation in a very safe fashion. There are some technical matters that don't allow every element to attach to a motor, and we have a few designs that deal with that. In the back, we replace something called a cyclorama, which is a sky sheet in the back. We replace that with a large roller that just rolls the cloth down from above. For the travelers, these are the draperies that come in from the sides. We extend those farther off and we make those static and in place. We've learned from the staff that those don't move in position, so we believe we can safely do that and sort of lock their position in place. And finally, we keep some of the masking legs. These are the elements that hide the stage wings. We keep those on the counterweights and we seize them in place with a known load that won't change. And that's, of course, a money-saving element. So all of these changes in total will allow the students to take full advantage of the stage rigging by being able to raise and lower these pipes in a safe fashion. They can attach loads to them, and of course they can run the show in a way that's more in keeping with contemporary practice and, more importantly, meets the geometry of your stage house.
Okay.
That's it, Rick.
Okay. Are there any other questions on that?
Yeah, I just had a question. With Schuler Shook, when you rejected Grand Stage's alternate plan for 334, what was it that you did not like about that bid, the alternate?
The alternate bid used an alternate motorization method that we really don't look to approve for what we call dynamic loads that change their payload, aka what we find on stage. Our spec calls for grooved drums. These are motors that have a drum that lets the lifting cables lie right on a machined groove. The alternate that was proposed doesn't allow those cables to lie on a machined groove. They instead have them lie on other cables. And we've been examining that technology for quite a while. We do accept it for known loads, for loads that don't change, and for loads that are limited in their overall payload. Further, this scheme called for putting the motors up above at the head beams in a position where they would only be accessed via a lift. So with that, we couldn't recommend taking that. I recognize there is a much lower cost, but that comes at in our opinion, a lower quality assurance.
This is a real basic question. I've been to a few plays, but what types of things are we talking about hanging from these winches? I think Peter Pan automatically, but what types of scenery gets hung and moved?
The biggest element is stage lighting. Stage lighting is some of the heaviest payload that you'll raise and lower over your stage. It gets changed and manipulated with every show, and we find in high school theaters that the use of the working of a stage electric is probably the one that leads to the most mishaps in my career. Anytime I've been investigating a problem on the stage, it's generally around the stage electric. They're fairly heavy, and those loads can go from 0 to 2,000 as the students hang and unhang those lights. Otherwise, there will be pieces of scenery, scenic elements that can raise and lower. They obviously have a limited fly height here, but there are many things that will get raised into place. Basically, everything you see when you see that curtain open has been suspended from the rigging.
Okay. So how many days a year would this rigging be used?
That sort of ties into how many productions you have and how often you change the stage. It's been a while since we interviewed with your technical director and learned all the activities, but certainly the full time that you're in production, all the full time you're in preparation for those productions, and any time you are looking to occupy the stage, you are essentially using the stage rigging, whether that's an award show or a full-on production or a lecture. If you're bringing in a screen, if you're lighting up the stage from above, you're making use of elements that are suspended from that rigging.
So all our band performs. Shayla, Mike, do you know about, is it 100 days, 50 days? Will the new classes be using this every day? Or I'm just trying to get
I don't know the exact amount of days, but our new classes will use this space. They'll use the RMA and they'll use the DMT. I mean, the best way for them to learn the curriculum is, they're going to learn aspects of stagecraft and design within the curriculum. So it's an additional group of students now using this equipment.
Okay.
So just a quick question. So essentially you're going from a traditional way to a modern way in the name of safety for the students with the increased use. I guess the one question I have is, where do we fall relative to sort of the rest of the North Shore schools? Are we ahead of the curve, behind the curve, catching up to where people are in terms of your experience as the consultant?
I have to give you sort of a two-part answer to that question, and that's a good one. You began, in our opinion, pretty far behind the curve because of the geometry of your stage house. And in correcting that issue, aka dealing with the stage house that you have, the motors put you ahead of the curve.
Okay. Any other questions? It's a significant expenditure.
One more
Significant
question.
capital expenditure.
Will we see similar expenditure in the DMT, the smaller theater?
I don't believe that we have it in our upcoming 5-year capital projects.
Will we need new lights? Or will the lights work with these new
There are
motorized?
some other things on the 5-year that actually were originally scheduled to be done before the rigging, but we actually pushed them out until we complete the rigging because it made more sense. I don't recall what those are off the top of my head. They might have lighting and sound.
Okay. So
Right.
that'll-
The change of the rigging does not require any changes to the existing stage dimming and control system. It can be accommodated as is.
Okay. So mechanically, how do we approve this if it's in the FY18 budget? We're approving a bid, but we don't have an FY18 budget yet, so.
Yeah, based on how timing works, you actually do it every single year. So all of the paving and all the things that you'll be approving the next few months, in order to get them in the queue, to have them completed either in the summer or in a reasonable fashion, need to be done
Okay.
ahead of time. So when you receive your completed budget, this will be incorporated as part of Carroll's Buildings and Grounds.
Okay. But we start spending in this fiscal year? Or you push off the payments till?
I don't believe they can start much of the actual work until
Oh,
school
okay.
is
Until
out,
school's
so
out. All right.
it's really just getting things in line to do that.
Okay.
I guess just one last question. Going forward, Perkins and Will, I assume, is going to oversee the project. And is Schuler, are you done now? You were just a consultant brought in, and now?
No, Schuler Shook will be involved in, for any project, there's submittals that the contractor has to submit to make sure that they're adhering to the intent of the contract documents. Schuler Shook will be involved in reviewing those submittals. They'll also make on-site visits to make sure the actual work is adhering to the intent of the contract documents. So they will continue on through the end of the project.
Okay, in that case, what's Perkins Will focus?
Perkins and Will is managing the project. We do oversee the project. We do take care of all the logistics of coordinating with the contractor, the contract, setting up all the front end of the project requirements, which are the district standards. For this particular project, we're on an hourly not to exceed, and because our scope is not in the actual design of the specific elements, we're coordinating. There's also an electrical component. The electrical engineer is underneath our scope. But from the onset, we're really trying to minimize the time that we need to spend, but still spending the time that is necessary for the project.
So essentially, this 449,000 isn't the final number, because your portion is not in here?
Well, it's a Jen. Why don't you ask Jen? Is Perkins and Will and the consultant in there? Or?
No, that is the construction bid in order to actually do the construction for the project.
So what are your costs and what are the consultant's costs? Do we know?
I don't have it in front of me, and it is, like I said, an hourly not to exceed, so it's kind of a top end, and then whatever time we have to spend up into that limit.
Do you know what the not to exceed number is, anyone?
Jen's banging it out on her computer.
Rick sent me a really nice summary if I can find it.
Well, while Jen's looking, I'm assuming how many motors are involved with the winches as they're talking, and then what type of warranty comes with this? Because you're essentially going from a manual to mechanical changeover, correct?
Yes, and I'll let Todd answer that one.
Right. The specification calls for a 1-year warranty. We'll recommend that these motors have an annual inspection, as all stage rigging is recommended as an annual inspection. They have a long service life, mainly because their duty cycle, how often they are used compared to motors in factories, is quite light. We're making them very strong, but they're not asked to perform that lifting very frequently, not compared to a manufacturing plant. So we find that these motors are very robust. Of course, the controls are computer-based, and I think you should be thinking on the order of a 10 to 15-year service life on the control side. I think that would be typical with lots of other devices that are computer-controlled.
All right, sorry, it's in 4 phases, so I had to kind of do some quick math, so don't hold me to the exact numbers. Phase 1 was for design, phase 2 was construction documents, phase 3 was bidding, and then phase 4, which they were just referring to as the construction administration. Looks like there's a split between theater consultant and obviously the not to exceed numbers by Perkins and Will. They both look like they'll be just under 25,000 each.
In total? That's all 4 phases?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Any other questions, thoughts?
So Reese, we only approved the 449, we don't approve the 500?
Well, I think well, you tell me how the architect works. I mean, Perkins and Will is on they're our architect, so.
Right, we're asking you for, in this particular approval, is to approve the bid that was submitted, which is the 4 and some change. I actually believe in this project there might have actually been a PO written for some of the initial design work that actually started in 2016. So we will pay those invoices. They'll be part of the monthly board packet based on the not to exceed and the hourly rate.
Okay. So may I have a motion to approve the auditorium rigging bid, the amount of $449,857?
I move that the Lake Forest Community High School District 115 Board of Education approve the auditory rigging bid in the amount of $449,857.
Second?
Second.
Any other questions, comments? May I have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
Dr. Nemekis?
Aye.
Mr. Markison?
Aye.
Mrs. Kryling?
Aye.
Mr. Mormon?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Dr. Elliott?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next, approval of the West Campus parking lot paving and tennis court resurfacing bid in the amount of $379,900. So I'll ask for a motion and then a second and then some discussion. So may I have a motion to approve the West Campus parking lot and tennis court resurfacing bid?
I move that the Lake Forest Community High School District 115 Board of Education approve the West Campus parking lot paving and tennis court resurfacing bid in the amount of $379,900.
Second?
Second.
Questions? I have one. Again, similar question to what are Perkins and Wells charges, and are they included in the $379,900?
Again, I don't believe this is total, and Rick just left, project cost. This is the amount of the approved bid, so I don't have their charge in front of us.
Are they an hourly? Is it still an hourly not to exceed
This
type
usually
review?
a set percentage on those type of projects.
Do you know what the percentage is? I asked that
I believe
earlier.
the
and
10
did-
to 15% range, but I could definitely get you something more precise.
I'll continue to state, I still believe for certain project, I understand the law requires we need an architect, but for certain projects like repaving and resurfacing, I'm not sure we need a Perkins and Will caliber architect, and I'm not sure that 12 to 15%, that seems like a lot of money to me, to review a paving bid. Most certified, qualified paving contractors, I don't know if they have an architect on staff, but they should know what they're doing, and if they've resurfaced our lot before, if they've resurfaced our tennis courts, so. But we're not approving that right now, we're just approving the bid. So, we've talked about this at prior meetings, maybe finance and ops meetings, about taking another look at architects, and how we use them.
It might be worth a moment. We've learned a little bit over the course of this past year that might be helpful. Jen, can you go through a little bit of what options that we have that we could explore, or is that better done in a finance meeting?
I'd rather go in further detail in a finance meeting, but I can say that that is something that we've explored. We actually just went through the exact process at District 67 to bring on a second architect to do basically what started off as a smaller project, kind of a test project per se, so we could look at and perhaps we have a project in mind or two that might be appropriate to do the same thing. But there is a very detailed process that you need to follow regarding putting out your RFQ and what's sealed, and then how you can actually interview and to vet. And 67 went through it, so I think we've got a pretty good learning curve on it as well. But that's something I think we could certainly throw on the agenda.
Okay. Thank you.
Though I will have to say the rates, because I do actually benchmark our rates, the Perkins and Will rates are exactly competitive with the market of all the other architect firms for the most part. Looking at their percent on capital projects, looking on their hourly rates, they're all basically in the same area.
Really? It just seems like, I mean, 40 grand to review a paving bid. And I know there's a process involved. That just seems like, I just can't get there in terms of number of hours. I just don't know how it would take that long, even at $200 an hour. I don't. But anyway, we'll explore that at a later finance and ops meeting. Yeah. So we've already had a motion and a second, so may I have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Markison?
Aye.
Dr. Elliott?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Mormon?
Aye.
Dr. Nemekis?
Aye.
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
Mrs. Kreiling?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next is the Acura contract renewal. Was someone going to talk a little bit about Acura for us and the importance of it?
Sure. Our partnership with Acura has been significant in helping us move forward a variety of different aspects of our strategic plan, and we've been very pleased with our relationship with them. I'm just going to share a few things that they've helped us with and will continue to. They've provided us support in our clearinghouse reporting for post-secondary enrollment and student services. They've not only helped us with reporting and making sense of our data, but also analyzing that information in order to be able to communicate out the post-secondary enrollment experiences of our students. They've provided year-long leadership consulting on best practices regarding our assessments, as well as our student placement processes, which we have gone through, which we've revised. They've partnered with us around the creation, implementation, and the evaluation of our student growth model, which is also outlined in our strategic plan. We've been working on data warehousing, as you know, looking at local growth analytics, and this also connects with our creation of our personalized learning profile, which we've talked extensively about in our strategic plan update, as well as in our Ed Committee. And this is aligned with all of our major areas of growth and areas of importance for our students. And basically, a personalized learning profile allows us to look at a student and see their progress in terms of our outlined expectations. And basically, in a nutshell, as we've been working to define what it means to be a Lake Forest High School graduate, certain aspects of that we want to make sure our students experience. And so our personalized learning profile, while we've done a lot of work internally to create the data systems, connect it, Acura has helped us align it within their platform to support our conversations around students. Something that we're going to be working on over the summer is the creation of a strategic dashboard, and this will help the Board of Ed, all of you, get a better sense of where we are with our progress around our district-wide goals. And so that's going to take some time, but it's earmarked to really engage that work over the summer. So at any point in time, you can look it up and see where we are. And this aligns with other aspects of the profile as well.
Thank you. So, may I have a motion to approve?
I have one quick question for her. The kids all recently, you started the SAT and PSAT suite of tests and whatnot that'll play into a lot of this personal data, personal plan. When do you intend to, and how will you be incorporating the PSATs into the students' planning? Or when will, as parents, we know or hear something about what the school does with the PSATs or those tests?
Well, that's definitely built into our student growth model as one of the components. We adopted, I'm trying not to give a presentation, but we adopted an all-in model where we've determined that our faculty, staff, as well as our administration, we're all responsible for growth. The PSAT suite is one way to standardize growth from students from 8th grade through 12th grade. That's one aspect of that model. We are looking at, part of our decision to adopt the SAT suite is because we truly believe in the standards that are embedded within it. We looked at our values as a district, where we're heading instructionally, and decided to go along with that suite because it aligns with all of our work around mapping and our expectations for learning, as well as our focus on interdisciplinary type of experiences for students. And so we had an assessment day, as you know. This week, we're working on the communication regarding specifically starting with the SAT results. And so we've had, I think I received a question about that. Because we've adopted the model, it should, our plan, it should expedite our communication of the results. Otherwise, we would rely on the state to determine our access. And so the plan is within the next couple of days, we've been working on the communication to make sure all of the information we send out to families is clear, transparent, that we're owning the scores and sending them out, as well as providing information for families to log in and to access additional resources regarding the SAT suite.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions for Shayla? Okay. So now may I have a motion to approve the Acura contract renewal?
I move that the Lake Forest Community High School District 115 Board of Education approve the Acura contract renewal through June 2018 in the amount of $36,900.
Second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Mormon?
Aye.
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
Mrs. Kreiling?
Aye.
Dr. Elliott?
Aye.
Mr. Markison?
Aye.
Dr. Nemekis?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next is approval of the East Campus roofing bid in the amount of $210,825. We'll try and do this the right way, save time for questions. So first, may I have a motion to approve the East Campus roofing bid?
I move that the Lake Forest Community High School District 115 Board of Education approve the East Campus roofing bid in the amount of $210,825.
Second?
Reese, can we take a brief pause there? Actually, they transposed a number onto the agenda. If you look at the actual recommendation, it's 201, not
Oh, okay.
210. Just want
All
to
right.
make sure you get the motion correct.
I swear I read that recommendation too. I did.
201.
825.
Save $9,000. Good job.
Yeah, I move that the Lake Forest Community High School District 115 Board of Education approve the East Campus roofing bid in the amount of $201,825.
Second?
Second.
Any comments, thoughts, questions?
I see we have a RDM a roofing consultant is consulting on this. So Perkins and Will has nothing to do with this. Glad you hear that.
And we've been told with other roofing bids that they actually, because of their expertise, could actually lower our costs. I mean, is that what you feel that these guys?
RGM also manages the project. They are on site every day for the project. They deal with the unions if there is necessary. They deal with the laborers. And he's photoing everything every day, making sure they're doing it right. The insulation's being torn off properly. There's no moisture. They do coring on occasion as needed. So he runs the whole project, oversees it. There's no Perkins and Will on this one.
All right, thanks. And we're in compliance with all the laws and requirements by the architect. Cool.
Was RDM in charge when we had the collapse, and didn't we have a failure during construction?
Of the roof?
Yeah, one of the roof sections.
That was actually brick. Wasn't a roofing issue, it was a brick not properly secured to a building which crashed through the roof, which made it a roof problem.
Okay.
When was that? I don't remember that. When was that?
Last year, we had, this is 40 or 50 years ago, somebody put mud on bricks and stuck it to the wall and then kept going. And at some point, it all let loose, and it came down into a classroom. Hopefully nobody was there. Fortunately, nobody was there, but yeah, from earlier
Missed
construction.
that. Okay, any other thoughts, questions, comments?
Yes, in the Education Committee, we heard this beautiful presentation last year from students with a proposal to put solar panels on the Lake Forest High School, which would contribute to reducing global warming and would ultimately pay for themselves over the course of many years in energy savings. And at the time, we heard that that might be folded into some of the roofing maintenance that was going on, or there was a hope. And I've just wondered where this wonderful project stands now.
Yes, that is still part of the plan. So when we initially looked at that, the feasibility on a return on investment was not in my lifetime, nor probably some of these students. There are some credits, though, that we've taken a look at that perhaps if we could take advantage of would make that more feasible. I've actually spoken to one of the big players in the solar market and actually getting our roofs as up to date, and what the changes that we're making, the improvements that are making will only help with that project. They've seen some of our drawings and our loads and things like that. So there's no concern with needing to make any mechanical changes to the roofs or how they're laid out. These are kind of membrane surface type roofs, so they will actually be very good candidates for solar as we can continue to kind of investigate whether or not that recommendation will be forthcoming. But we have met several times over the last few months.
Thanks. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Mrs. Kreiling?
Aye.
Mr. Mormon?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Markison?
Aye.
Dr. Elliott?
Aye.
Dr. Nemekis?
Aye.
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next is approval of policy 2:125, board member compensation. I hate the title of that. Everybody should know the board is not compensated. I'm not exactly sure why the title of this policy is board compensation expenses. I think what it deals with is the types of reimbursable expenses that are allowed by our board. So is that a good summary, Ted, of
Pretty
what?
much a good summary, except the board secretary is allowed to be compensated.
Right.
But
You get 2
I'm not
bottles of
getting
water.
anything.
Yeah. Allowed.
Allowed, but not
Yeah.
partaking.
So may I have a motion to approve the second reading of policy 2:125 related to board member expenses?
I move that the Lake Forest Community High School District 115 Board of Education approve the second reading of policy 2:125 board member compensation, expenses.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
Dr. Nemekis?
Aye.
Mr. Markison?
Aye.
Mrs. Carling?
Aye.
Mr. Mormon?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Dr. Elliott?
Aye.
Motion carries.
A couple more policies. First is approval of policy 5:60 related to expenses. This is the second reading. May I have a motion to approve?
I move that the Lake Forest Community High School District 115 Board of Education approve the second reading of policy 5:60 expenses.
Second? Dave seconded. So roll call vote, please.
Dr. Nemekis?
Aye.
Dr. Elliott?
Aye.
Mrs. Carling?
Aye.
Mr. Mormon?
Aye.
Mr. Markison?
Aye.
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next is approval of policy 8:32 related to meeting protocols. Second reading. May I have a motion to approve?
I move that the Lake Forest Community High School District 115 Board of Education approve the second reading of policy 8:32 meeting protocols.
Second?
Second.
May I have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Markison?
Aye.
Mr. Mormon?
Aye.
Dr. Nemekis?
Aye.
Mrs. Carling?
Aye.
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
Dr. Elliott?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next is approval of our human resources report. We've all had a chance to read it. There were quite a bit of larger number than normal items on the HR report. Any comments, questions on anything? Nothing. Okay. May I have a motion to approve the human resources report as presented?
I move that the Lake Forest Community High School District 115 Board of Education approve the Human Resources Report as presented.
Second.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Carling?
Aye.
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
Dr. Nemekis?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Mormon?
Aye.
Dr. Elliott?
Aye.
Mr. Markison?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next are our consent agenda items. I'll remind everybody, anybody can remove any of these items from the consent agenda. So may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda items, including approval of disbursements, payrolls, and financial statements for March 2017, minutes of the regular meeting dated April 4th, 2017, minutes of an executive session dated April 4th, 2017, minutes of a special board meeting from April 24th, 2017, minutes of a special meeting, the old board, new board meeting on May 1st, 2017, disposal of audio recordings from June 9th, 2015.
I move that the Lake Forest Community High School District 115 Board of Education approve the consent agenda items as presented.
Second.
Second.
May I have a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
Dr. Elliott?
Aye.
Mrs. Carling?
Aye.
Mr. Markison?
Aye.
Mr. Mormon?
Aye.
Dr. Nemekis?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We have several FOIA requests. Karen Berkowitz had 3 FOIA requests. It's a commercial FOIA request. That status is complete. Janice Schnobrich, a resident, also had a FOIA request. That status is complete. We have one pending from a non-resident, Mr. John Bowman. So several announcements, getting towards the end of the school year already. This Saturday, as someone mentioned, is the LFHS prom. Tuesday, May 16th is the Enjoy the Journey walk, and that evening is the band concert at RMA at 7:30 p.m. Thursday, May 18th is the orchestra concert at RMA. It says 7:30 a.m. That can't be, right? p.m., right? Yep. p.m. Senior finals, May 22nd and May 23rd. Monday, May 22nd is the choral concert at RMA at 7:30 p.m. May 23rd is the last day for seniors. May 24th is LFHS Honors Night at 7 p.m. at RMA. Monday, May 29th is Memorial Day, no school, and then finals are on May 31st through June 2nd. The last day of school is June 2nd, and Saturday, the best event in all of Lake Forest is the graduation, hopefully on the front lawn this year, 2:30 p.m. Who's in charge of weather this year? Nobody's taking responsibility for it. So next month, Monday, June 12th, is our next Board of Education meeting right here at 7 p.m. So may I have a motion to adjourn the Lake Forest Community High School Board meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.